10 most dangerous Big Ten Group of Five matchups. So I did the 10 most must-win matchups of Power Four teams only in the Big Ten. Zach and I disagreed on that a little bit, but Jeff, I'm going to get your thoughts on this. So for those of you listening on podcast, these are the most dangerous matchups I have versus group of five teams. Okay, so this is a combination of good group of five teams and also situations where Big Ten teams could possibly lose. As we know, losing to a group of five team is a bit of a stain on your conference. It's not something you want to happen. I made fun of bowling of who was it, Mississippi State, that lost to Bowling Green last year, or was it Bowling Green or Toledo? One of the two. One of the MAC schools last year, plenty. So these are some of the group of five matchups going against Big Ten teams that I think are the most dangerous. Jeff, we'll get your thoughts after I list them out here for the podcast listeners. Number one, I have Northwestern at Tulane. Number two, UCLA at UNLV. Number three, Washington at Washington State. Number four, Northern Illinois versus Maryland. Number five, Ohio at Rutgers. Number six, Miami of Ohio at Wisconsin. Number seven, Miami of Ohio at Rutgers. Number eight, Buffalo at Minnesota. Number nine, Colorado State at Washington. And number 10, I have New Mexico at Michigan. Jeff, your thoughts?
So I'm really upset with you, JR. I clearly think the number one is Kennesaw State University at Indiana.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I think you missed
one.
the ball here. Just kidding for the audience, although that is a real game happening. My son will be a sophomore at Kennesaw State this year. It's in the suburb of Atlanta. I went to Indiana. We're going to go to it. I'm driving up there for the game. And, my son thinks Kennesaw actually has a real shot at it. So, but yeah,
that wouldn't let him keep dreaming.
That wouldn't make the list. To cut the mustard, the first three I agree with, and just to hit on them real fast, Northwestern at Tulane. Tulane actually, like Lindy's. So I get the bunch of preseason publications, and one of them is Lindy's. Northwestern is ranked 81 by Lindy's. Tulane is ranked 45th. So Tulane should be favored, especially that's at Tulane. And really think about new quarterback Preston Stone, your opener on the road. I mean, it would have been nice if this was game 2 for Northwestern on the road like that. So that's a real tough one for them. Number 2, UCLA at UNLV. So I know we got our UCLA person. I agree. This is a tough one. UCLA opens at home versus Utah, right? And that's going to be a tough battle. And then you have to go on the road. So if you lose the game, then maybe you don't go into that second game with a lot of confidence. If you win it, maybe you could get caught with your guard down. Washington at Washington State, rivalry game. Definitely agree with that on the road for Washington. That's something they better be ready to play. And then, JR, I guess later, a little different. I thought Ohio at Rutgers would be a little tougher. They're closer ranked by Lindy's, but having an experienced quarterback like Calic Manis, I do think Rutgers will pull it off. So I had that one, number 4. Number 5, then I had Miami of Ohio at Rutgers as well. That's game 2 for them. So just a little different than yours. And then my number 6 was your number 4, Northern Illinois at Maryland. One of the reasons is Maryland, despite them not always having great years, they do great in September, right? They haven't lost a lot in September. So I'm kind of, Loxley has that figured out. Where he struggles is in October. So that's the only reason I kind of dropped that down to number 6, JR. And then I agree on 8 and 9, Buffalo at Minnesota. That's just a threat because Lindsay has a new quarterback, but it's at home, So I think they're pretty safe. And then Colorado State at Washington, also the opener. Washington will be ready for that. I don't see an upset of Colorado State. It's an opener. It's at home. And then my only one in the top 10 that I don't like New Mexico at Michigan. I actually had New Mexico at UCLA as a bigger threat just because, and I'm not disparaging UCLA here. I really like what Deshaun Foster is doing. In fact, I love how hard they play for them. I just think that's a bigger threat than obviously at Michigan, with that defense and everything. So I'd put New Mexico at UCLA and bump the New Mexico at Michigan. But really, not big discrepancies with what you have.
Yeah, sounds like we're pretty tight there together. So you mentioned Northwestern, Tulane. Tulane is favored in that game by 6.5 on FanDuel, which is interesting. I mean, it's not exactly interesting. I figured Tulane would have been favored there, but yeah, definitely a weird scheduling decision there by Northwestern. If a Northwestern fan is listening and wants to comment and let us know if there was some kind of special scheduling thing there that went on, I couldn't find anything out there about why that would have been, but that is an interesting decision there. And then I will say, so I'll just kind of skip to the end here because we talked about it. So Michigan is this is one that people are going to roast me for having them at 10th, and I get that. Michigan is favored in the game against New Mexico by 36.5 points. I get that. I get that. But hear me out. All right. Last year, Michigan struggled in their very first game against Fresno State. That was a one-score game in the third quarter. That was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter between Fresno State and Michigan, primarily because of the quarterback issues that was going on with Davis Warren and everything else. Now, they're not going to have those same issues, but what they are going to have is they are going to have a true freshman quarterback starting. Like you referenced Drake Lindsey getting his first start against Buffalo. It's Drake Lindsey, but he's in his second year. Bryce Underwood's going to be a true freshman starting against New Mexico. It's going to be at home. He's going to have a really good running game. So I'm not putting him anywhere close to like in the top 5. But I do think there needs to be something said there about the possibility Michigan struggling in the opener last year, Bryce Underwood, true freshman starting quarterback. And then I know Michigan fans hate it when I bring it up, but we do need to wonder what's going to happen with Sherrone Moore. Is Sherrone Moore going to be coaching this game? Right? Though these sanctions are going to come down at some point, and I don't think Michigan just offered up a 2-game suspension all willy-nilly for nothing. I think there might be more game suspensions coming for Sherrone Moore. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine. But this is a game that I would not be surprised to see Michigan get off to a slow start, and it'd be something like 10-3 at halftime, and people are thinking, Michigan's a little bit closer here. Now, they'll probably pull ahead and win by 30, 40 points, but still, something at halftime that's a one-score game, I'd call that a little bit of a dangerous situation.
Yeah, one thing to support JR, beyond these 10 that he provided, he provided an honorable mention list. Like if you weren't to list that as 10, the honorable mention list is, includes things like Kennesaw State and Indiana. So it's hard to find one.
Old Dominion, Indiana.
Yeah, Old Dominion, Indiana. And yeah, I think with the way Signetti is, I mean, they're going to smoke both those pretty good. So Jared, I think, you have that at 10, like, oh my God, but the other options to replace them other than mine that I had, I still like the New Mexico at UCLA, but beyond that, I couldn't find any others that would probably necessarily bump that one.
Yeah. Fisherman says that Northwestern Tulane is the second game of a home and home first. Why are you doing a home and home against Tulane? I don't get. Okay, I accept that reasoning, but then I also have a question of what's the reasoning for home and home with Tulane? I don't know. I just don't get it personally. But hey, Steely Matt reposted the stream there on Twitter. Thanks for doing that, Steely Matt. Really appreciate you, man. You're doing that just about every week for us, and we appreciate that. You're awesome. So my other honorable mentions were Oregon State at Oregon, rivalry game. I don't think it's going to be too big of a game, but it is a rivalry game, so it's one we need to think about. New Mexico at UCLA was one that I had there, and I debated about putting it 10th as well. I saw somebody ask about it in the chat. Western Michigan at Illinois is actually one that I had there as well. I think Illinois is going to win it, but you have that out-of-conference game with Duke. Could there be a little bit of a sleepy situation? And Western Michigan gave Wisconsin a really good game last year in that one. Now, I'm not saying Illinois is Wisconsin last year. They won 5 games. Illinois won 10. But still, early in the season, a MAC team coming in there wanting to make some damage. And then Ohio at Ohio State, and then Georgia Southern at USC I had as well. That one wasn't really all that close, but it was one kind of on my radar. So, and then I think believe Western Michigan is also playing Michigan State. Yeah, that's the opener there. I didn't write that one down, but I had that one as well. So Western Michigan getting plenty of Big Ten content this this season. So yeah. Um, yeah, and I was gonna say as well, Jeff, that Northern Illinois one of the reasons why I had it up there higher. I don't think they're gonna be as good as they were last year, but they did beat Notre Dame last year at Notre Dame. So does Northern Illinois find another big out of conference? You know, I mean, Maryland's not what Notre Dame was last year, but do they find another out of conference run? Can they put together, upset another bigger school? I don't know. Could happen.
Yeah, and let's see, that's the second game. So, Maryland is going to, we don't even know. Do we have a good idea who Maryland's quarterback is going to be? Because it's going to be a new one. So those would
Yeah,
be
it's
the
either
ones that worry me the most. And one of your points on having Michigan 10th there is just with a new quarterback, which we're assuming it's going to be Bryce Underwood and not Keene. That's the part that does scare you some, right? Is that quarterback getting settled in? Often they're just, they're nervous and everything's sped up and they haven't settled in yet, and bad things can happen, when that's the case. So for Maryland, yeah, they open with FAU and then have the Northern Illinois and then Towson. So do expect them to be 3-0 going into Wisconsin, but you never know with a young quarterback leading the charge there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, going through the comments. Death Star says, JR, I think overall you're too low on Rutgers in terms of record. I do think they should win these two games. Yeah, I'm not picking Rutgers to lose these two games by any means. Don't think that I'm saying that, Death Star. The only two that I'm picking here, the only one I'm picking here to be a loss is Northwestern. I'm not picking anybody else on this list to lose. I just think they're dangerous games. This is less so about Rutgers and more so about, I think, Ohio and Miami of Ohio are dangerous teams this season.
Yeah.
If you notice, I have Washington on here twice as well, and I think Washington is going to be a borderline playoff team, possibly. So it's nothing against Rutgers. It's just,
Yeah, and
they play some dangerous opponents, I think.
just an example. So Ohio, Lindy's has them 88th in the nation. Now that might not sound that high, but for a MAC school, that's a solid rating. A lot of MAC schools are in the hundreds. And this year, I think we went from 134 D1 teams to 136, JR, just so you know. I didn't realize that till today, I think. But 88 for Ohio, that's a solid MAC school. And remember with MAC schools, that they're getting all the guys that didn't get offered by Ohio State and Michigan's, and those players work their butts off and really develop and are there 4 or 5 years and are older players. And then even Miami of Ohio is 95th. So again, any MAC school under 100 tells you they've got some good talent, and that's a pretty good ranking.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. Ty Summerall says Michigan last year had a first year everything last year, and Ohio State has been saying the same thing about sanctions for 4 years. Nobody cares, but Ohio State, they can't win on the field. Tice, appreciate you being here. Thank you for commenting. I will say that Michigan did have a lot of new last year. They did not have a brand new starting true freshman quarterback, though, and they do have that this year. They'll most likely have a brand new starting left tackle, a brand new starting wide receiver one, a brand new starting tight end. It's going to be a lot of brand new starting on this year as well. And then as far as the sanctions for 4 years, I think you've had a head coach suspended the last 2 years. So I don't think it's all that much of a hot take to say there's a possibility of your head coach being suspended there. I know you want to turn this into an Ohio State-Michigan thing, and I get that. That's fine. I wear the Ohio State badge. I'm an Ohio State fan. But this isn't Ohio State homerism. I've said I don't think there's going to be very many sanctions. I've said it before, and I've said that, to me, we just have to look at the facts and see what actually happens. I think there's probably going to be sanctions for Sharon Moore. I don't think there's going to be all that many sanctions for the team. And I think that the NCAA has backed that up with the way they've pretty much done things. So, Tice, appreciate you being here, but I think you've confused me with some other Buckeye fans that try to go too far at things. I'm giving my honest analysis here, and I remain pretty restrained as an Ohio State fan on some of this stuff. I feel like I do a pretty good job of that. But if it's not to your liking, that's fine. You can find a show someplace else. Thanks, Tice.
Yeah, we're definitely not. There is, an element of strong support for Ohio State, but our whole basis for the Big Ten Huddle is we're covering all the teams and we're trying to do it objective as we can. And everyone brings some bias based on what school they went to. It's hard not to totally avoid that, but I think we kind of avoid going deep on Michigan sanctions. We don't want to ignore it or anything, and we might bring it up, but we're not making that like the story. And if anything, on Michigan, I wrote an article on my website, bigjustfootball.com, as one of the very first ones. I mean, I looked at the talent they had coming back at key positions, including defensive line. And I mean, I had wrote, I don't think they're falling off a cliff. Some think so. I don't think so. Remember, some had them in the preseason top 10, and I supported that and wrote a whole article saying they're not falling off a cliff here, people. In the first part of the season, they fell off the cliff. Now, credit to them, though. Great upset of Ohio State and then beating Alabama, who's a super talented team. So really it was like a roller coaster ride for Michigan. But just for everyone to know, we're definitely not – we're trying to cover every Big Ten team and do it in an objective way and say how we feel, but it's not homerism. And if anything, I like to maybe try to call each other out, JR, for being too much of a homer for our teams. So, but yeah, interesting comment.
Yeah, everybody has bias, and you're never gonna not find anybody without bias. If they don't have any bias, they're not a true fan, in my opinion. And there's place for that. Last thing I'll say here is Ty says you're Michigan hater. Stop and name that one that you don't have a question about. I picked Michigan to go 9-3. So, and there's other people out there that people say are, college football with Sam gets called an Ohio State lover all the time, and he picked Ohio State to go 9-3. So
yeah. Well, in fact, JR has predicted Michigan to beat Ohio State for your reason. They're in their head. They've won 4 years in a row until it's changed. So JR was on the record saying, I have Michigan beating Ohio State.